My name is Evelyn Carter, and 5 years ago, my parents spent $800,000 on my sister's wedding, but refused to give me a fraction of that to save my daughter's life. I was cast out, humiliated, and left with nothing but desperation. This is the story of how betrayal turned into fuel, how I fought back, and how those who once abandoned me now come begging at my door. If this kind of story resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that matter. Let's begin. The night my father told me, "If you walk out with him, you walk out of this family forever," I thought he was bluffing. He wasn't. I had grown up inside these walls, under chandeliers that glowed like suns, dining tables polished until they reflected our faces like mirrors. Every dinner felt like theater, and I was supposed to know my lines. Yet, while Bella learned how to smile at the right time, tilt her head at the perfect angle, I filled notebooks with sketches of houses and towers, tracing futures that weren't written in the Hartley script. I never thought that one day those sketches would carry me straight into exile. That evening, the atmosphere inside the mansion was thick enough to choke on. The dining room gleamed, silver cutlery aligned with military precision, crystal glasses catching candlelight. It looked like wealth incarnate, but beneath the surface was the constant reminder that love here was conditional. Daniel sat beside me, shoulders straight but clearly out of place. He wasn't born into this world of silk ties and artifice. He didn't hide his calloused hands or the way his suit was borrowed from a friend. That was exactly why I loved him. My mother cleared her throat, her pearls catching the light as if punctuating her words. "Evelyn, your father and I have given this a great deal of thought," she began, her voice syrupy with control. "It's time we secured your future properly." Her eyes flicked to Adrian Pierce, seated across the table. He had the kind of smile polished in law school corridors, ambitious and slick. My sister Bella glanced at him with something between admiration and relief. Adrian was safe, powerful, exactly the kind of man she had been taught to worship. Richard Hartley leaned forward, his gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "Adrian is prepared to take you as his wife. It's a union that cements the Hartley name where it belongs." His tone was final, like a verdict already handed down. The words made my pulse hammer. I reached for Daniel's hand under the table, grounding myself. "I won't marry him," I said quietly but firmly. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. "Don't be dramatic. Adrian is offering stability, prestige. He understands legacy. What could Daniel possibly give you?" Daniel's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. He didn't fight for himself. He didn't need to. His designs, his vision, the way he looked at me as if I were more than an asset. Those were already louder than words. I straightened my back, refusing to flinch. He gives me respect. And love. For a moment, silence froze the air. My father's face darkened, and when he spoke, it was thunder. "If you walk out with him, you walk out of this family forever." The chandelier light flickered across crystal glasses. Bella's eyes dropped to her lap. Margaret pressed her lips together, refusing to meet my gaze. Adrian smirked like a man who had already won a case. I squeezed Daniel's hand tighter. "Then I walk." The storm broke. My mother's voice rose, accusing me of selfishness, of betrayal. My father stood, veins in his neck straining, but I was already pushing my chair back. My legs shook, but not from doubt. That night, I left with Daniel. The mansion that had caged me for 24 years shrank behind us. I thought that was the worst they could do to me. Banish me for loving the wrong man. Days later, the cruelty arrived in paper form. A letter bearing the Hartley crest, stripped of affection, cold as a contract. It informed me that my name had been erased from the family trust. My childhood bedroom was emptied. My wedding announcement returned with the word "refused" scrawled across it. There was no mistake. I was gone. I stared at the letter until the ink blurred with tears. My father's threat had been no bluff. My family had reduced me to nothing more than a liability erased with the stroke of a pen. Yet even in the rawness of that loss, Daniel's arms anchored me. He whispered that we would build our own life, brick by brick, with or without them. Still, when I carried my suitcase through the Hartley gates one final time, I couldn't help glancing back. The mansion glowed in the dark, indifferent to my absence, windows blazing like eyes that refused to blink. I didn't know then how much deeper the betrayal would cut. On the night Bella wore her $50,000 gown, I begged for a fraction of the cost to keep my daughter breathing. The hospital lights had burned into my eyes for hours, their sterile glow as unforgiving as the news I had just received. Lily's tiny chest heaved under tubes and monitors, each breath a battle she was too small to fight alone. The doctor's words rang like a sentence in my head. Surgery in 24 hours, $120,000 deposit required. Without it, she would slip away. I had nothing left to sell, no loans left to beg for. There was only one door still half open in my mind, a door I swore I'd never knock on again. Rain plastered my hair against my face as I stumbled up the marble steps of the Ritz-Carlton. Through glass doors, I saw chandeliers glimmering like frozen fireworks, a sea of sequined gowns and tuxedos, champagne fountains spilling liquid gold. My sister's wedding was the spectacle of the year. $800,000 poured into one night of prestige. I pushed through the doors, leaving puddles on the pristine floor. Guests turned, their laughter faltering, violins straining off-key as I passed. My heels slipped on polished marble, but I forced myself forward, heart pounding louder than the orchestra. At the center of it all, Bella twirled in her gown, layers of silk shimmering beneath the lights. She was radiant, adored, everything my parents had ever wanted. I cut through the crowd until I stood before Richard and Margaret. Their smiles evaporated, masks of hospitality slipping into stone. "Please," I gasped, my voice raw. "Lily is in the ICU. She can't breathe on her own." The surgery costs $120,000, just a fraction of tonight's expense. My father's jaw tightened. "Not here, Evelyn." I fell to my knees, water soaking into the hem of Bella's aisle runner. Gasps rippled through the room. I clasped my hands together as if prayer might soften him. "She's 3 years old. Your granddaughter. I am begging you." He glanced at the champagne tower, at the photographers circling like vultures. His words cut colder than the rain still dripping from my dress. "We've already invested $800,000 into this night. Don't ruin it." A murmur of shock rippled through the guests, but no one stepped forward. No one dared. Margaret turned her face away, lips pursed as if my desperation were a stain on her reputation. Bella's eyes found mine for the briefest second, then dropped to the floor, her lashes heavy with cowardice. Adrian leaned close, voice low but sharp enough to pierce. "You picked the wrong man, Evelyn. And now your child pays the price." His smirk was deliberate, cruel, the triumph of someone who had always been certain of his superiority. I reached for Bella, but she turned her shoulder, presenting her perfect profile to the cameras instead of her broken sister. My strength gave out. I sobbed into the fabric of my rain-soaked dress, the music grinding to a halt, the whispers slicing me apart piece by piece. 2 security guards approached, firm hands gripping my arms. I struggled, calling out my daughter's name, but the orchestra resumed with violent insistence, drowning me in sound as I was dragged toward the door. Behind me, champagne glasses clinked again, as though nothing had happened, as though my humiliation were just another scheduled performance. Outside, Daniel was waiting, his face pale under the hotel awning. Rain sheeted around us, mingling with tears I no longer tried to hide. He held up his phone, the screen glowing like a verdict. The message was brief, merciless, final. "No payment. Surgery canceled. Patient condition critical." When my bloodline abandoned me, strangers and in-laws sold the ground beneath their feet to save my child. The hospital walls hummed with the mechanical rhythm of monitors, each beep tethering Lily to life. Her face was pale, lips tinged with blue, her tiny chest rising and falling with the aid of oxygen tubes. I sat beside her crib, Daniel on the other side, both of us hollow-eyed, hollow-hearted, listening to the cruel countdown of hours. We had been told bluntly, no payment, no surgery. My parents' fortune, their gilded empire, meant nothing to us now. The sliding doors opened, breaking the sterile quiet. Carol and Thomas, Daniel's parents, stepped inside still dripping from the rain. Their coats smelled faintly of earth, of home. Carol pressed a warm envelope into my trembling hands. Thomas's voice was low, gruff with something between shame and love. "It's 50,000. We sold the back lot. Land that's been ours for generations. But Lily is more important." I tore the flap open, the check staring back at me like a lifeline. My knees buckled, but Carol caught me before I fell. "You shouldn't have," I whispered. She squeezed my shoulders, her voice steady. "Your family. That's what we do." That night, Daniel launched a GoFundMe page. The words we typed blurred with exhaustion. "Our daughter Lily needs emergency surgery. We have 24 hours. Then, against every expectation, the world began to move. $20 from a neighbor who worked double shifts at the diner. $50 from a college friend I hadn't spoken to in years. $1,000 from a retired teacher who wrote, "This isn't charity. This is love." Notifications bloomed across the screen like sparks in the dark. By morning, the story had spread further than we could imagine. A local journalist, Anna Lopez, reached out, wanting to tell Lily's story. She came with a notepad, listening more than she asked, her eyes soft with the kind of empathy that couldn't be faked. When the article went live, strangers from states away joined the chorus, hundreds of small voices rising together until the numbers climbed toward salvation. The hospital administrator looked at the swelling total, then at us, and for the first time spoke with something resembling kindness. "We'll proceed. The remainder can be arranged in a plan." Relief didn't crash over me like a wave. It seeped in slowly, disbelief fighting with gratitude. When the day of surgery came, Daniel and I sat in the waiting room clutching each other's hands until our knuckles whitened. Hours later, the surgeon emerged, mask pulled down, sweat on his brow. His words shattered the weight crushing my chest. "She made it. She's stable." I stumbled into Lily's room, heart pounding. Her cheeks glowed with the faintest trace of pink. I kissed her forehead, my tears falling freely onto her skin. My voice shook as I whispered to her, to myself, to every ghost of betrayal that still haunted me. I'll never beg again. Never on my knees, the TV in the waiting room flickered with images of paradise. White sand, turquoise waters. Bella and Adrian on their honeymoon in Bora Bora. Bella's diamond ring catching the sun as headlines gushed, "A dream life begins." I stared at the screen, jaw tightening. My daughter had fought for air while they toasted with champagne on a beach. The room seemed to tilt, fury mixing with resolve. They had chosen luxury over life. They had written me off. But they had underestimated me. The betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. 5 years ago, I was on my knees. Today, I'm on the stage holding an award they never imagined I'd earn. The chandeliers of the downtown Los Angeles ballroom cast 1,000 reflections across the room, but none of them felt brighter than the faces staring up at me. My palms didn't tremble, not like they once had in hospital corridors or on marble steps outside my parents' house. This time, I wasn't begging. I was standing beneath spotlights, my name engraved on the plaque in my hands. Woman of creative excellence. I remembered the vow I had whispered in the ICU, my hand clutching Lily's as machines kept her alive. Never on my knees again. That promise carried me here. And so, when I leaned into the microphone, I didn't thank fate or legacy. I said, "Family is defined by who shows up." The words rippled through the room, carried by the hush of recognition, the weight of stories people imagined behind my voice. I saw Anna Lopez in the crowd, pen poised, watching me with that quiet intensity of someone who already knew the truth. The applause followed me back to Carter plus Hart's headquarters, a sleek glass tower overlooking the city. Desks buzzed with designers sketching, phones ringing, a team built not on inheritance but on grit. Daniel met me at the door with a smile that still carried the warmth of ramen dinners in our first apartment. Lily skipped behind him, 8 years old now, curls bouncing, asking if she could show me the drawing she made of our new lobby. Later, in the calm of my office, I spread out a stack of envelopes. Each one bore the name of someone who had once given 20, 50, maybe $1,000 when we were desperate. Inside each was a letter, handwritten, and a check that doubled their gift. Gratitude was not enough. Repayment was principle. For Carol and Thomas, I set aside something different. A deed. That evening, over dinner in our sunlit home, I slid the box across the table. "It's yours," I said softly. "The land you sold to save Lily." I bought it back. Carol's hands flew to her mouth, tears spilling. Thomas tried to clear his throat, but his voice broke anyway. "We never wanted it back," he managed. "We just wanted her safe." Peace, warmth, laughter, things I had once believed only existed in fairy tales, now lived in the walls around me. Yet the past had a way of sending cracks through even the strongest foundations. Anna visited soon after. Recorder balanced on her knee as she asked questions not just about design but about the Hartleys. Her eyes sharpened as she spoke of their fading empire, lawsuits murmured in back rooms, debts piling. "Someday," she said, "their story will have to be told. And when it is, your voice will matter." I didn't answer, but inside I knew she was right. The night ended quietly. Lily asleep upstairs, Daniel reviewing proposals beside me. My phone buzzed on the counter. At first I thought it was a client, but when I opened the message, the words chilled me. If she had given us the money, the house would be ours by now. The sender, Bella. I stared at the screen, breath caught between fury and inevitability. It wasn't a mistake. It was confirmation. Their greed hadn't died. It had evolved. Slowly, deliberately, I took a screenshot and saved it into a private folder. The name I typed for it was simple: Lessons. The same parents who spent $800,000 on champagne begged me for $180,000 to keep a roof over their heads. The words pulsed in my mind as I sat at the head of the Carter plus Hart conference table, sunlight cutting clean lines across the polished glass. My parents, Richard and Margaret Hartley, sat opposite me. Their elegance faded, their posture bent by years of denial. Bella trailed behind them, a shadow of the sister who once twirled in couture gowns, her silence thicker than the glass walls around us. They had chosen this office as their stage of desperation, not realizing it was mine. I let the quiet stretch, savoring the reversal. 5 years earlier, I had stood dripping rainwater on their marble floors, my voice hoarse from begging. Today, they were the ones waiting, lips pressed white, eyes darting to the briefcase resting near my chair. Richard finally broke. "We're about to lose the house," he said, the cadence of his old authority stripped raw. "Foreclosure papers, banks sealing the gates, a family like ours. We can't end this way. You could help us. You should help us." Margaret reached across the table, her manicured hands trembling. "Evelyn, you've built something incredible. You have the means now. All we need is $180,000. Just this once. For the family name." For us, I studied her, remembering the way she once refused to hold Lily, her only granddaughter, as tubes pumped air into her tiny lungs. The echo of champagne flutes and whispered gossip filled my memory. I leaned forward, slow, deliberate. "Do you remember the night I begged you for less? 120,000. To save my child, Margaret's mascara blurred as her lips quivered. Richard scowled, trying to hold the line. "That was different. This is survival. You think you can sit there and punish us for one mistake?" I unlocked the briefcase, swung it open. Stacks of bills, crisp, undeniable, filled the room with the scent of paper and power. Their eyes widened as I slid it across the table. On top lay an envelope. "This is 200,000, I said evenly. "More than you asked." Enough to buy back your dignity. But first, sign the statement inside. It reads, in 2018, we chose vanity over our granddaughter's life. We invested in appearances, not family. We abandoned Evelyn when she needed us most. You sign this, and the money is yours. Margaret gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Richard's face twisted crimson. You call this help? It's blackmail. You want to humiliate us in public? I met his fury with calm. No, I want the truth. For once in your lives, the truth? He slammed his fist against the table, veins taut. You think this makes you better than us? The door clicked open behind him. Ana Lopez and her colleague stepped inside, cameras poised, notepads ready. Flashbulbs burst like miniature explosions across the glass walls. Margaret sobbed openly now, turning toward the reporters as if they might rescue her. Richard shoved the briefcase shut, his voice shaking with rage. You've made your choice. Enjoy your little empire. He stormed out, Margaret stumbling after him, Bella trailing silently, her head bowed. I sat alone in the sudden hush, the sunlight steady on my shoulders. The briefcase remained untouched in front of me, its weight meaningless compared to the silence they had left behind. I placed a hand on its lid, steady as stone, and whispered to myself, justice isn't for sale. It's for memory. My daughter asked me, would Grandma have cried if I died? And I knew the last thread had to be cut. Her question landed in me like glass splintering. Lily, now 8, looked up with eyes too wise for her years. The same child who once gasped for air in a sterile ICU while I begged on marble floors. I pulled her into my arms, heart pounding, and realized that survival hadn't erased the wound. The scar still lived in her innocence. And in that moment, I knew. The Hartleys would never cast shadows over her life again. Our new San Francisco headquarters gleamed against the skyline, its glass facade catching sunlight like a promise. Carter plus Hart had grown from sketches on our kitchen table to a name spoken in boardrooms and on magazine covers. Daniel and I walked through the atrium together, Lily skipping between us, her laughter echoing higher than the vaulted ceiling. The air buzzed with excitement. Staff arranging flowers, old donors greeting each other, clients admiring displays. This wasn't just an office. It was a monument to resilience built on ashes, carved by hands that refused to bow. That morning, I stood before an audience gathered not for luxury, but for hope. Faces familiar and new. Carol and Thomas Carter smiling softly. Neighbors who once left $20 bills taped to our door. Young designers we had mentored. I thanked them all. We're here because community showed up when no one else did. Family is not inherited. It's chosen, brick by brick, act by act, love by love. Applause thundered through the atrium. Lily clapped the loudest, her curls bouncing, her smile a beacon. Later, in the quiet of our home, Lily nestled beside me on the couch, her small hand resting on mine. Mama, she whispered, would Grandma have cried if I died? I froze. The question I had dreaded for years was finally spoken aloud. I kissed her hair, feeling the weight of truth pressing in. No, I admitted silently to myself. Out loud, I told her what she deserved to know. Their silence was their answer. But you are surrounded by people who would cry, fight, and move mountains for you. That's what matters. That night, I called my attorney. Every Hartley-linked asset, the last shares, the scraps of inheritance they hadn't stripped from me, I ordered sold. Close it all, I said firmly. No trace left. When I hung up, a strange lightness filled my chest. For the first time, I wasn't tethered to their name, their money, their power. I was free. On opening day, sunlight spilled across the lobby floor as guests filed in, cameras flashing. Daniel introduced me with quiet pride, and Lily perched on Carol's lap in the front row, beaming. I took the stage in a navy dress, not to flaunt wealth, but to stand tall in what we had built. This building, I told the crowd, is not proof of revenge. It is proof of love, of persistence, of the truth that when people believe in you, nothing is impossible. Then I saw them. At the far back, outside the glass doors, Richard and Margaret Hartley stood like specters, thinner, smaller, their polished sheen replaced by frailty. They didn't enter, didn't call out. They just watched. Lily's hand slipped into mine, her voice soft. "Mama, they're here." I held her tighter. We stepped down from the stage together, applause still ringing, and walked straight past the doors. I didn't glance back. Not even once. My parents had made their choice years ago, and now I had made mine. As we stepped into the afternoon sun, Lily tilted her head toward me, waiting for an answer I hadn't yet given. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "They apologized by showing up too late." She rose from humiliation to dignity, proving that betrayal cannot break the spirit of someone who chooses truth over silence. Injustice may linger for years, but when met with courage and resilience, it collapses under the weight of its own lies. Like a verdict finally read aloud in a long-delayed trial, justice may arrive late, but when it comes, it echoes for a lifetime. No wall of wealth or vanity can outlast the tide of truth. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you felt the same pain and triumph.